Good morning and welcome to Section 8 Lessons. This will be Volume 2. Now, yesterday or the day before, we did Volume 1. If you haven't had an opportunity to see that volume, you're welcome to do so. There should be a link in the description, and it will be our Section 8 Lessons playlist. And you can just click on that, and you can see all the different linear progression we're making with talking about Section 8 vouchers and how to go through the whole process. Now, sorry about that. I have a cat and he likes to interrupt my videos. So, with this being said, the video will be about 8 to 15 minutes at maximum. There will likely be one or two ads. If you want to support the channel, let the ads play. If not, I understand. Beyond that, you'll also be able to find a booking link for me. For those of you that do not know me, I own section8consultant.com. I'm well known both on YouTube and Google, and a lot of tenants as well as landlords contract me to assist them with their cases. The reality is a lot of people could go to housing authorities and fill out applications, but those efforts are usually fairly unsuccessful and a lot of times result in very long waits. There's a lot of things you should know about the process. So when we talk about bypassing the Section 8 waiting list, the first thing you want is evidence. There's a lot of people talking about the topic but have little understanding of what it is. So look, if you actually have operational manuals like I do, then you begin to understand the policies, procedures, and rules. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to switch over to HCB. Now, to help you guys out, this link will be in the description so you can follow along and look at some of the things that I'll be talking about. But just so we are very clear, it is called a 7420.10G, and this is the actual manual. Now, when I talk about a manual, I mean this is the exact rules, policies, and procedures in which the housing authority must play by. And now that's also would be in addition to federal rules in which the tenant or prospective tenant would play by. So as you can see, I'm more of the real deal when it comes to giving you advice about whether or not you're going to be able to bypass a list. And to some degree you can if you understand how to utilize the system correctly. And that's what we're going to talk about. So if you would join me on page 74 if you have an opportunity to click on the link. If not, we're going to talk about something that's very particular when it comes to housing authorities and whether or not you are just an ordinary person that will end up at the back of a list, and those of you that will ultimately be given preference to be towards the front of the list. So as you can see here, you see examples of local preferences, and there's a lot of things to be considered with this. The first thing I want to tell you is those of you that are 62 years and older are considered a preference. In many cases, 55 and above. Families that are already residing in public housing or maybe a victim of crime could be a particular preference. There are many different types, so it would be a rather long conversation. We covered all, but I will say that the primary things that will greatly impact your application is, number one, having a disability. But that alone is not going to help you so much. It represents a big portion of how you would land on a list and how high, but there are a lot of people with disabilities. So we would need to stack a number of preferences to make you rise above others and be considered quicker, like being a veteran. And those of you that receive a Social Security disability check, those of you have a proven mental or physical disability that would impact your seeing, hearing, feeling, depth perceptions, and other things that would affect your quality of life. Beyond that, those that are seniors that are disabled, those that are young that are disabled. And then I'm going to cover an additional list here, if you bear with me just a moment. And these are going to be special preferences. And so besides the veteran status and age, we have income. This is your gateway. And I explained it in Volume 1 that 75% of all vouchers that are considered must be extremely low income. So in the genre of people simply being low income is not sufficient. If you're considered just low income, then you will be in that 25% allotment of vouchers. If you're considered extremely low income, and you meet that particular number, and if you don't know, trust me, you would want to find out, then you would be in the other 75%. Those of you that are applying for housing vouchers at housing authorities in counties that you don't live in, look, they prefer you to work and live in the county in which you're applying, and that has a great deal of impact on whether or not you're going to end up on one side of the list or another. However, it's not a heavy preference. The heavy ones are going to be things like One, being elderly, if you have that qualification. Two is disability. Three is domestic violence. If you're in a relationship, it has probably out of all the special criterias and preferences and special use vouchers, domestic violence victims, and then second to that being disability, and then third to that would be those of you that are homeless. Now, each one of these preferences, that by itself is not going to be effective. You have to actually understand the rules and policies for each, and I intend on covering that in a different video in order to keep this one kind of short. So if you don't know what the specific rules are, you'd want to know, otherwise you won't qualify for these things. Beyond that, award letters and county assistance, food stamps, SNAP, Medicare, Medicaid, those are all things that go to the venue of giving you some preference. And those of you that are American Indian, African American, and possibly have some mixture of Latino could get some small preferential points there. So that's special preference. Now, what I would like to take a look at here as we scroll down, and again, this is 475 pages of pure glory, because this manual does not tell the client or the tenant what to do. It tells the housing authority how in which it must operate. And if you understand how the housing authority must operate by federal policy, then you can persuade the system to work for you based on that. It's more or less what most people would consider to be reverse engineering. I've made a career of doing this, so I understand what must happen. So this does detail a great deal of details in which they must operate. And so you look here, you have income targeting. And if you look here, it'll tell you at least 75% of families who are admitted to PHA, meaning Housing Authority Voucher Program, must be extremely low income. And so, man, you've got to hit that magic number. So beyond that, we're going to go down here, and there are other considerations to be considered, but one of the primary things, let's see if I can still find it, is going to be special admissions. A lot of you guys are under the delusion or misbelief that just because the lottery is closed, the housing authority is closed, there's no vouchers left. That's untrue. In fact, around 15% of all, I should say that most housing authorities keep in reserve around 15% of their funding for vouchers. And so that 15% is considered for special use vouchers or special admissions. They have given it many different names. The point is they can assign these vouchers because they get special funding from the United States government under pandemic rules and other things. For instance, they gave out 70,000 EHVs or emergency housing vouchers, and that would be special use. Or if they have a greater funding in the city or state for people that are suffering from domestic issues with their partners, then that would allow you to be able to climb the list at a ridiculous rate. So it's a combination of these special factors that can make you bypass everybody. You simply showing up, filling out an application is not going to be sufficient. You being low income by itself is not. Look, there's lots of people who are low income. That by itself is nothing special. That will only buy you a spot at the very end of the list. A lot of people are under the belief that I'm disabled, then I should get that first spot. No, the disability will move you about halfway up that list, but that's all it will do. You're going to want to stack a lot of these different preferences. Look, guys, one of the things I like to tell you guys, if you really don't want to spend time reading thousands of pages of federal legislation, if you don't want to sit here and reverse engineer 475 pages of PHA guidelines, data manuals, and all that to figure out what the sweet spot with this is, let me appeal to your vanity. If you actually can afford to have a consult with somebody that's a consultant like me or anybody else, doesn't matter, then this would be the easiest way to do that versus you roaming around YouTube and Google looking for a lot of erroneous information that usually leads nowhere. Many people know that I'm the real deal because I produce all the federal manuals and different things, and it's transparent what I do for people. And it gives you a hell of an advantage because unlike the rest of people that will show up and fill out applications that day, you will have a superior advantage in every way. So going back to the eligibility part, so there's lots of things that make you eligible, and there are lots of videos about that. But in principle, if you're extremely low income, you're eligible. If you're low income, you're eligible. And then there's a lot of different types of people within the low income and extreme low income. that could be admitted to the program and potentially get a voucher. The main thing is are you a veteran? Are you going to be an older person? Do you have an extreme low income? Are you homeless? Are you disabled? Do you receive county services? Do you live in a zip code? And do you have enough preferential points? Now let's roll back to special use or special admission vouchers. These can be also granted on the premise of the housing authority employees believing that you have a compelling case. They can also be granted because you're a federal witness or because you go and you seek your mental health care through the county, and then that mental health care worker makes a referral to you, backdoors the voucher to the housing authority. In other words, they make a call, and then you might be able to get that. And then the other way is if you're able to persuade your application in such a way that would have great effect, where it would give you a higher standing than others, which is part of what I do, then there's always the potential you could receive a special admission or special use if the funding is available. So let's look at some examples of how that might play out. If the government all of a sudden gave out $50 billion and there were only 40 people that actually meet the criteria, then those 40 people would get vouchers quicker than everybody else. That's what I do. I target special funding, special admission, and then I help you find the right voucher. And in the case of this video, what you really came here to learn is what special preferences are. And now that you know that this is what it all boils down to, then that's what you need to pursue. We could talk about tragedy and 3 steps to getting a voucher all day long with a lot of these videos and other things that you see on Google and YouTube. That stuff won't lead you anywhere. Without these essential facts, you don't have a good case for getting a voucher. If you want a good case, you'll need to pursue this by watching videos and educating yourself, or you're welcome to hire a consultant. So I hope this has enlightened you in the 10 minutes that I've been allotted to make this video. And we'll be moving on to volume 3. And I'm going to go in a little bit more detail for you guys. So I've enjoyed talking with you, and have a wonderful day.